everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you know when you're getting new episodes. And we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The ShOUT Show. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everybody, happy Monday. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS or ShOUT Show, and I am glad that we made it to yet another Monday. Here, what we sometimes call the belly of the beast or the belly of the whale, we are surviving, and that is one thing I want to talk about today, surviving. So before we even get into it, I want to give us some shouts out. First of all, let's give our regulars some shout out. Sister Ree, thank you for coming on the show. Sister Zatana, our consultant producer. We can't do it without you. And of course, we have a host of other people on the show. I also want to give a shout out to the people who are coming on the show for the first time. Someone reminded me of this. I am sorry. Listen, we're on every day. We're not on just Mondays. We're on every day. We have been consecutively going for 151 shows. Why 151 shows? Why go 7 days a week? I'm going to tell you why. Because the world has a lot of information. I have a lot of thoughts and I have a lot of concerns. And I feel like we all have some of those same concerns. I put them on a platform. This is the show. Anyone else coming for the show on the first time? You know the time. It's 6 p.m. on the East Coast, 5 p.m. Central, and 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That's the other thing. The last thing I want to do, last bit of housekeeping, is when you come on the ShOUT Show, we hope that we give you a compelling reason to come back to the show. A compelling reason to tell your friends, you know what, I spent this half hour, not just with Preacher Moss, but with the SOS family, and I came away with X, Y, and Z, and we hope those things are beneficial to you. A lot of times, the things that we're talking about are compelling arguments, they're compelling issues, and we try to give compelling solutions. That said, everybody else who comes on the ShOUT Show, I'm talking about the regulars, the SOS family, the people who have been here from the beginning. As always, I treat you like it's the first time we even started on the show. I thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. And I thank you so much for coming and spending our time. And your support is invaluable. That said, you didn't want to hear all that, but you had to hear all that. Today, I want to talk about something that's really important. This concept of time. There's a story from a play. I always get when colored girls have committed suicide. And one of the main slogans, one of the main lines out of that play is, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I have come to understand that we have encapsulated that. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Now, that is something that comes out largely out of the Black experience here in America, but it's interesting now because it's becoming more and more widespread. More and more people are becoming sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I really spent today trying to figure out what is that phenomenon that's coming across. It comes around. It came around the last election. It's back now. That sense of disenfranchisement, that sense of not being connected, that sense of hopelessness, that sense of fear. And I'm like, what is this? And I broke it down. We, brothers and sisters, we no longer, many of us are in full control of our me time. And I'm not talking about, your me time away from your family or your parents or things like that. I'm talking about the extra me time that's been evidenced because of this COVID crisis. Because we're not in workspaces anymore. We're not in the mall anymore. There's a push to get things up to 75% capacity in some of these restaurants. But even that, we're not returning to them because that's a learned behavior. We have to go and trust those areas that we're going into. But this whole idea of what happened to me time is something that's fascinating. I talked to this subject, 145 episodes ago, and I kind of brushed over it. But I realize now I can't brush over it. because I feel like I owe you an explanation, because the application of that idea is a lot more expanded now. It's a lot more applicable now. And I have to say this because we're going into an election season and it's going to get worse. Brothers and sisters, for all you need to know, the words that are coming out of my mouth are very clear. There is a war for your me time. There's a war for your me time. There are people who sit in offices and plotting how you should spend your me time. And when I say your me time, I don't mean that time with your family. I'm talking about that time that you spend in your car when you're waiting to get your latte or triple latte at Starbucks, or maybe at the grocery store. Now I have to give you a little context about this. I have to give you a little context. So we're going to go back. There's a book that everyone should read. This book right here. I want you to know this term. This term is cognitive surplus. Then you get it by Clay Shirky. Cognitive surplus. And what I did was I've read this book numerous times, and I was like, how can I apply it to people in our community, people who are, valuable folks in our community that find themselves victimized by this whole idea of the evaporation of me time. Let me give a shout out for Sister Child. You're up late over in the UK, but we're glad to have you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This idea of me time goes back. It goes back. Now, first I thought, you know what, let me take it from my perspective of being African American. What has been the historical application, anthropological aspects of me time for African Americans? Go back to slave time. Now, it was interesting because I read several books, and the inference was slave owners back in those times framed me time, the little bit of me time that slaves had, because they thought that slaves couldn't think for themselves. That had been the thought for a long time, that African Americans in slavery, coming out of slavery, could not think for themselves. And thus you had to have the master think for them. But when you go back and read some of this stuff, particularly some of the things that the slaves wrote, it's an amazing process. The issue is not that, brothers and sisters, the slave owners thought that these people could not think for themselves. It's the exact opposite. They were afraid of what they thought. They knew they could think for themselves, and they were afraid that these people would continue to develop a hierarchy in their own thoughts, in their own process, in their own existence, that, oh my gosh, they might be free one day. They might figure out the language. They may figure out the laws. They may figure out, you know what, if I move this bear and this bear, oh my gosh, they may figure out, you know what, I don't like that model. I'm going to create my own model. I don't like your business. I'm going to develop my own business. And what happened was, well, you know what happened. Preacher Ross in 2020 is using the platform talking about the exact same thing that they were fearing. Let me continue. As it applies to us today, there's a great example in Shirky's book. The example is the 1700s. Bear with me here because I have to give it a little context. In the 1700s, England, UK, had what was called a gin problem. G-I-N, not J-I-N for Muslims. A gin problem, an alcohol problem. And the society of the UK was plagued by this gin problem. I mean, people would just get intoxicated. It led to all kinds of social issues. And the UK government tried to outlaw it. I mean, they tried to, all 30 years of trying to end it. It never worked. Till finally they made it illegal. And of course, it led to a whole nother situation that would be echoed later on in the United States with the Volstead Act, when the United States tried to outlaw alcohol. And you saw all the problems that came out of that: mafia, drugs, prostitution, all that type of stuff. It was very interesting. It was extremely interesting that when television came along, television created a new type of addiction. It sought, if you will, it sought to look at, brothers and sisters, how we spent our time, and then craft mechanisms, craft devices to make sure we got that time. We are literally looking and engaging at a machination of how people spend time. I'm guilty. I do the shout out show. I've been doing it since April 24th. Haven't missed a day. All praise to Allah. But I try to put it in a space that I'm trying to positively engage your cognitive surplus. I'm not trying to waste your time. I'm trying to give you a conversation that's worth a listen, a thought. However, all good things have the potential in the wrong hands to become bad things. 2016, everyone talked about the Russians. And I have no doubt that the Russians interfered with the elections of 2016, tried to interfere with the election of 2012, definitely will be trying to affect this election, along with probably a bunch of other countries. Okay, we got that. But the danger is we're missing the point on how people are attacking our cognitive surplus. They're not these days trying to take up our cognitive surplus. No, it's even more diabolical. What they're trying to do now is make sure that you question your own logic with your own time. That you question your own logic with your own time. Now you're not sure what to do with your time. And in that unsureness, if you will, people will interject things. The genius, the evil genius, and please, I hope somebody shares this. Share this, because I don't even know if I'm going to remember it correctly, but share this. In the era of Trump, like in the era of McCarthy, like in the era of Nixon, and even in the era of Clinton, there was a device, a strategic understanding of feelers. Feelers. When I say feelers, people say, what does that mean, preach? It means that these are things that I want to say accurately, or as accurate as I can, understand what a threshold is. So let me tell you what I mean by a threshold. It is the ability to withstand something to a certain point. You know about pain threshold? Everybody ever say, hey, you ever go to the doctor and say on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? I'm a 5. That's a pain threshold. They've taken the exact same thing and they are quietly and subconsciously jamming it in our face every day. It's a pain threshold. And that pain threshold, at a certain point in time, gets manipulated into how you spend your time. Now, everybody's going to say, this preacher, you're going to bring up black people as the model for a cop? Absolutely. And it became something with basically back in the day with advertising. Some advertisers, they were selling soap or toothpaste or something like that. Let me explain to you how it's working. It's very basic. Back in the day, I want to say Colgate, Johnson & Johnson, whoever it was, they were selling toothpaste to everybody. White people were selling toothpaste at a good place, at a good point. And then they realized they were advertising to white people to sell this toothpaste. But they realized with the black community, they didn't have to advertise at all. And black people were buying the same amount of toothpaste, if not more. The same amount of toothpaste, if not more. And somebody said, wait a minute, we're advertising over here getting this amount. We're not advertising over here getting the exact same amount. What would happen if we put something in here, a little advertising? Let's see. And the rest is history. It blew up. It blew up. And they've been exploiting black audiences and black consumers ever since then. We're just happy that somebody took time to look at it, if you will. And as a result, we have these imbalances. Now, hold that thought. Because it becomes something even more diabolical. The twist that happened in 2016, and I've spoken a bit about it, but sometimes when you're speaking, you have to wait for something to fully play out. I'm going to give you the playbook now for what's happened here in the United States about cognitive surplus. This is what happens to your free time. You now have a political season, but you've been softened up ever since the last election. Listen to me. You've been softened up since the last election. And what they gave you was a pain threshold. Let me tell you something. Pain thresholds are diabolical. Pain thresholds are things that are easily manipulated. Pain thresholds are psychological. Allow me to continue. Here in the United States, the president, the powers that be, I don't even think it's that smart, but I'm saying the powers that be issued, in some regards, a pain threshold. As you look at politics as it is right now, COVID as it is right now, one of the things we're not talking about is the pain threshold. Literally, how much pain and suffering can we take? Now, why is this important? I'm going to tell you why. When you have a pain threshold, it means that people can gauge how much you can take. But to gauge how much you can take requires a certain commitment to intensity. Intensity defines how much you can take. So let me give you an example. On a threshold, a pain threshold, a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most intense pain, 1 being the least intense pain, if I were to give you steady doses of level 5 pain, by the time I stopped and gave you level 1 pain, you almost think psychologically that doesn't hurt at all. Let me say it again. If I were to give you a level 5 intensity of pain over a period of time, and then all of a sudden I dropped it and gave you a level 1 level of intensity level of pain, you would probably say, I don't even feel that. It's been the same thing for the last 2 3/4 years. You have been set up, brothers and sisters. We have been set up, brothers and sisters, that they can continue to give us level 5 levels of pain, and we take it and we take it and we take it to the point that when we get a level 1 level of pain, all of a sudden we're desensitized. That's the word we use. We're desensitized and we go, oh, it doesn't even hurt that much. Let me talk about politics. Good old 45. Donald McCarthy, that's what I call him. Donald McCarthy, President Donald McCarthy, is a master in this, in that he gives you things that are so absurd that your level of dealing with the truth or his truth is a pain intensity of 5, 7, 10, to the point that when he gives you a lie that's only 2, you may psychologically think he's not lying. Woo! He's not lying. And then the flip of it is, the dangerous, demonic flip of it is, the people who love Donald Trump, that think he could do no wrong, will watch him inflict this pain on other people, and they will say it doesn't hurt much, clearly understanding they're not even going through the same pain. So what do we say? I'm saying the Russians figured this out. They didn't come over here, brothers and sisters, with a disinformation campaign. They came over here with a structured, realistic, understanding, applicable strategy to make sure people felt pain. Because here's the thing, when you feel pain, brothers and sisters, when you feel pain, there's no me time. When you feel confused and depressed, there's no me time. Think of the time when you, brothers and sisters, lost a loved one, or dealt with some type of traumatic event, or traumatic injury, if you will. The one thing you weren't worried about was time. You worried about everything else other than time. You were dealing with a pain threshold, for lack of a better word, that didn't even allow you to think about me. Didn't allow you to think about my feelings. It allowed you to operate, but you were operating with pain. Let me tell you something about athletes. Let me get real with you guys about athletes. Let me get Sister Ika a holler all the way from Indonesia. Peace up. In the NFL and professional sports overall, and this may sound really, really nasty, but a professional player's career is defined 2 ways. Number 1, of course, the accolades, how you performed, if you will. But the second one is how well you played with injury. How well you played with injury. Meaning that your threshold of pain was so high, you're in pain, but somehow you got through it, and we applaud that. It's very heroic. But in the end, you're hurt. And as soon as you stop playing, that knee or that shoulder or that eye socket or whatever, it's going to degenerate. Nobody's going to be around when you're truly in pain. So, brothers and sisters, what's happened now is the powers that be, Republican, Trump, racist, even, I don't know, I don't even, Democrat, it doesn't matter. The evil aspects of society have figured out, one, how to increase your pain threshold to be able to give you more pain, and two, we've gotten into a theory in society that what? Brothers, this is what? A theory in society that basically promotes us playing with injury. I would say we're not whole people. COVID comes along. COVID even takes away our ability to celebrate our uniqueness because we have to be in these spaces. And then on top of it, you have people who say, I don't need a mask. What does that sound like? I don't need a mask. People thinking, I have a high level threshold. COVID won't get me. But you know, you got a whole lot of examples of people going, I don't need a mask, and now they're on a ventilator, or else, or worse, they were on a ventilator, and they're no longer with us. So as we begin to wrap up, brothers and sisters, slowly, step back from things. Step back from Instagram, step back from Twitter, step back from YouTube, hell, step back from this shout-out show, if you must, as a last resort. But seriously, reframe what your me time is. Look at the distractions around vying for your me time. Don't watch television to watch television. Watch television, understand that there are enemies about that have figured out strategies for me to give them my me time. And it doesn't take a lot, brothers and sisters. It doesn't take a lot. I don't know if you ever read this book. It's a book called The Great Transformation by Carl Polanyi. And he gives this scenario of the early 1000 in the UK, like not 1100, but before then. Check this out. He talks about how they weren't, you didn't have all this property. Like farmers would take their cows or their herds, the cattle, whatever, and they would take them to watering holes, right? They take them to a watering hole. Nobody thought about it. You just take it to a water, take your cows or your sheep, whatever, take them to the watering hole. Brothers and sisters, go ahead, let them graze. And nobody's thinking about this. Then he says, one day, these farmers show up to that same watering hole, and there's a problem. There's a problem. That watering hole has a fence around it. The watering hole has a fence around it. And that fence is meant for your cattle or your sheep or your lamb not to get water. Now, what was a normal process has been complicated. Your pain threshold has been raised by this one fence. And now you have to figure out, what is it I need to do to be able to get inside that fence? And he says that was one of the first episodes of bartering. Bartering. Meaning that for me to do that, for me to have my cattle use that water, I now have to give you something of value. I have to create value. And out of that expression of creating value came the whole idea of rent. See, because there was no legal stuff back then. Now I have to deal with rent. For me to bring this stuff, now I have to pay for my cattle, not just using the water, but being on this land. In that one little example, brothers and sisters, that one little example, that sliver of evidence that people can turn a little bit the nuts and bolts of what? Threshold. They can apply pressure through different ways and different scenarios. And they've been doing it ever since. So today's episode was not about whatever happened to me time. That'd be foolish. I'm telling you in a large regard, what happened to your me time. And I hopefully conveyed what you need to do to get your me time back. Get your me time back. There are people at war over your me time. I'm not talking about the people that do marketing and advertising. That's a base level. There are people who want your me time for no other purposes other than evil purposes. They want to manipulate your me time. They want to tell you that, oh, it's okay. You know, this your threshold. It's okay. You can deal with it when you really can't. You know, as old men say, pardon language. Don't piss on my back and tell me it's raining. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. It's a lot of people walking around with stinky backs. Don't be one of them. So listen, everybody, that's my show. I hate to end it on a urine reference, but it is what it is. You got to keep it real. So listen, tomorrow's show, we're gonna have. I'm gonna be showing. I don't know what episode. I don't know what idea I want to do. But please remind me, because I think we need to go back and finish this up. We need to probably have a part 2 about whatever happened to me time. I appreciate everybody coming on the show. You know, there's nothing but love and respect for you. Shout out to people that come on the show, people who are ill. We're going to start doing Sick and Shut In. Sister Ishrat Siddiqui, I want her to feel better. Mom, feel better. All the people, man. If you know people who are not feeling well, who are sick, shout them out on the shout out show. You know, sometimes just saying, hey, listen, I shouted you. I know how people say, hey, man, I was a match and I pray for you. That means a lot. So if you can do that, you know what? I appreciate you. But until tomorrow, brothers and sisters, I hope I said something worth your time, and I hope to see you again very soon. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your shout out show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next shout out show. Simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarifa Tar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifatar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.